So I want you to picture a room, right? But not just any room, a massive hall filled with the absolute, undisputed elite martial arts masters in Asia.
Right, we're talking about the pinnacle of the martial arts world here.
Exactly. I mean, you have decades, honestly, centuries of this pristine temple-forged tradition all gathered in one space. And then into this room walks a 28-year-old guy.
Yeah, holding nothing but two simple wooden sticks.
Right, 2 sticks. And in the span of, 20 minutes, he just absolutely shatters their entire worldview.
It really is one of the most profound paradigm shifts we've seen in modern martial arts history.
Yeah.
And, it didn't happen in a movie script. It was real life.
Real time. Between masters who are just at the absolute top of their game.
Absolutely.
And so that is exactly what we are doing today. We are taking a massive magnifying glass to this culturally seismic event. It was captured on video, actually, and it went super viral.
Yeah, I think it has over 80 million views online at this point.
Insane. And people usually know it by the title, like Chinese Kung Fu Master Laughed at Filipino Martial Arts. But it's what happens after the laugh that is the real story here.
That's where the actual substance is, yeah.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to basically extract the hidden principles of combat efficiency from that specific exchange. We want to interrogate the true definition of, sophistication.
Right.
And decode how this brief 20-minute encounter in Beijing fundamentally revolutionized martial arts training on a global scale.
Because it is just a remarkable case study. I mean, we're going to look intimately at the mechanics of it, the deeply rooted history, the actual neurology of human reaction.
Oh, the neurology stuff is wild.
It really is. And of course, the profound philosophical shifts that occurred right there on that mat.
Yeah. And I need to be completely transparent with you, the listener, right out of the gate here, because as someone who holds a black belt in karate, I mean, this topic hits incredibly close to home for me.
I bet it does.
It really does. I have spent thousands upon thousands of hours in this crisp, heavy cotton uniform, just standing on these perfectly smooth hardwood floors, just meticulously perfecting rigid, preset forms.
The katas.
Exactly. In Japanese martial arts, we call them katas. And I know exactly what it feels like to dedicate years of your life to a tradition that basically demands absolute adherence to an ancient, unyielding template.
Right. There's a specific way it has to be done.
Right. So I have a deeply personal stake in what we are about to explore.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So let's set the stage historically and geographically here.
Yeah.
The year is 2017.
Good.
It's September. And we are in this massive, highly formal demonstration hall in Beijing, specifically at the China Martial Arts Association headquarters.
So not a local gym.
Oh, no. This isn't a local tournament or some weekend seminar. This is a major international cultural exchange summit. The room is packed with the absolute elite. Right, so you've got traditional martial arts masters from all across the continent, like karate masters from Japan, taekwondo grandmasters from Korea, silent practitioners from Indonesia.
Everybody who is anybody.
The air in that room must have been unbelievably thick with tradition. Just hierarchy and mutual respect for all these ancient lineages. You can practically hear the rustle of the silk and the heavy cotton.
You really can. And standing at the absolute pinnacle of this traditional hierarchy in that room is Master Lu Chen.
Okay, tell us about him.
He is, at this point in time, one of China's most universally respected kung fu masters. We are talking about a man with 50 years of dedicated, grueling teaching and training experience.
50 years.
50. His lineage traces directly back to the Shaolin Temple itself. He's a recognized master of 5 distinct animal styles of kung fu.
Which ones?
So that's the tiger, the crane, the leopard, the snake, and the dragon.
I mean, half a century dedicated to one of the most complex physical and philosophical systems ever devised. When someone like that walks into a room, they don't just command respect, right? They literally embody the art itself.
They are the living history of it. And then the Philippine delegation steps up to the center of the hall.
Right?
They're there to introduce their demonstration of Filipino martial arts, which, depending on the specific region or the lineage, is often called FMA, Eskrima, Arnis, or Kali.
Got it.
And the demonstrators representing this art are 28-year-old Raphael Cortez, who's a third-generation practitioner, and his instructor, Guru Manuel.
And Guru Manuel is older, right?
Yes, he's 70 years old, and he trained directly under these traditional, heavily battle-tested warriors from the island of Cebu.
Okay, so Raphael and Guru Manuel walk out, and Master Lu Chen looks at them. He looks at the literal rattan sticks in their hand, and he actually lets out a laugh.
He really does.
Like a dismissive, almost pitying laugh that just echoes through this entire silent demonstration hall.
Yeah, it's quite a moment.
And he switches to English so the international audience can catch his meaning, and he just calls it out right there. He says, Filipino martial arts, you mean stick fighting. Eskrima.
It's a moment of pure, unfiltered skepticism.
Mm.
And, I mean, we really have to understand why he reacted that way.
Right, from his perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From Master Lu's paradigm, he is looking at basic, rudimentary weapon techniques. He argues to the room that Kung Fu has 3,000 years of documented, recorded history.
Yeah, ancient scrolls and everything.
Right, has philosophical depth written in those scrolls. It possesses these incredibly complex systems of internal energy cultivation, what is often called ki or chi.
Okay.
And he essentially asks the room, what do Filipino martial arts have? Stick patterns, life movements. He explicitly categorizes FMA as having absolutely no internal cultivation, no spiritual dimension, and zero sophisticated forms.
Wow.
In his eyes, it is merely practical street fighting with weapons, nothing more.
And the craziest part to me is that the room actually erupts in murmurs of agreement. Like, there's this uncomfortable silence from a few people, sure, but a lot of these grandmasters are literally nodding approvingly.
They totally agree with his assessment.
Master Lu even points to this massive photograph on the wall of the hall. It depicts the dragon form, and he explains that this single form contains 108 distinct, highly complex movements.
108?
Yeah. And each of those 108 movements requires a specific, synchronized breathing pattern. Each one is designed to cultivate and direct different aspects of internal energy. And then he confidently states that it takes 10 years just to begin understanding this one single form.
Which perfectly illustrates his entire metric for value. Master Lu is equating age, written documentation, and extreme complexity with value and sophistication.
Right. That equals depth to him.
It's a very human tendency. We look at something intricate, something that takes decades to memorize, and we automatically assign it a higher intrinsic worth than something that just looks raw, direct, and pragmatic.
Now, I am going to play the skeptical martial arts student here for a second, fully leaning into my karate background.
Please do.
Because honestly, if I am standing there in my gi, with actual calluses on my knuckles from punching a makiwara board for years, and someone tells me that swinging a couple of rattan sticks around is somehow on par with decades of agonizing breathing exercises, internal energy cultivation, and mastering these animal forms that have been passed down for millennia. I mean, my instinct is to entirely agree with Master Lu.
Sure.
Where is the depth? In karate, we have katas that literally tell the stories of ancient battles. We have underlying philosophies about the perfection of human character through physical suffering. Just hitting something with a stick seems primitive in comparison.
And your reaction is exactly why this cultural collision is so vital to study today. Master Lu's critique and your skepticism make perfect sense, but only within a specific historical paradigm.
Okay, explain that.
Let's look at the history. Kung Fu, and to a large extent karate too, were developed, refined, and codified in temples, or at least in highly structured societal castes.
Right.
Temples are places of relative peace. They're places where you have the ultimate luxury, time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
When you have decades of peaceful, uninterrupted practice, you can afford to develop a 108 movement form.
That makes so much sense.
You can spend 10 years pondering the philosophical implications of a single stance because your immediate physical survival isn't being threatened every single day by an invading force.
So you're saying the actual environment literally shapes the architecture of the martial art?
Absolutely. The cultural and historical context is the bedrock of any fighting system. Filipino martial arts were not developed in temples. They were not codified by monks seeking enlightenment.
Right.
As Raphael Cortez deeply understood, his ancestors didn't have the luxury of 50 years of peaceful meditation. The Philippine archipelago has a history forged in almost constant warfare.
They're constantly fighting.
They fought against each other in tribal conflicts. And they fought against massive foreign colonizers.
Right. Let's talk about that history for a second because it is intense. We are talking about the famous Battle of Mactan in 1521, right?
Yes.
Where the indigenous leader Lapu-Lapu and his warriors completely decimated the heavily armored Spanish forces led by Ferdinand Magellan. And they didn't do it with internal energy blasts,
Not at all.
They did it with fire-hardened rattan, iron blades, and just a terrifyingly efficient understanding of combat physics.
Exactly. And when the Spanish eventually colonized the islands, They explicitly banned the native populations from carrying swords or practicing their martial arts.
Right, so they had to adapt.
They had to adapt to survive. They hid their deadly blade movements within cultural dances.
Yeah.
They swapped their actual swords for rattan sticks so they could continue training right under the noses of the colonizers.
That is incredible.
Their dojo wasn't a pristine temple with smooth, perfectly level floors. It was the dense jungle. It was the shifting sands of the beach. It was uneven, treacherous terrain where a single misstep meant you died.
Their curriculum was literally life and death. I mean, if a technique took 10 years to learn, it was useless because you might literally have to defend your village tomorrow morning.
Precisely. When your survival is constantly on the line against heavily armored invaders or rival tribes, you need a system that works immediately, effectively, ruthlessly.
You don't have time for a 108 move form.
Right. You strip away absolutely anything that is not purely essential to survival. Master Lu looked at this stripped-down, brutal pragmatism, and he mistook it for a lack of sophistication.
Ah, I see.
What he failed to realize, at least initially, was that removing the non-essential distilling combat down to its purest physics is a different and arguably higher kind of sophistication altogether.
But Master Lu isn't just going to stand there and debate history with them. He actually proceeds to do a physical demonstration to basically prove his point to the room.
Right, the dragon form.
Yeah. For 8 straight minutes, this 50-year veteran performs one of Kung Fu's most advanced, physically demanding sets. Picture 8 minutes of continuous flowing movements, impossibly perfect balance, explosive power that just instantly transitions into soft, circular, yielding motions.
It's mesmerizing.
It is. And when he finishes this grueling routine, he is completely centered, barely even breathing hard. The room gives him a massive, respectful applause. Grandmasters are bowing to him.
He owned the room.
He really did. In that moment, he has seemingly proved his thesis beyond a shadow of a doubt. Kung Fu is the ultimate pinnacle of physical and spiritual artistry.
It was an undeniable, masterful display of his specific framework. And with the room entirely on his side, he turns, gestures to Raphael Cortez, and says, "Now show us your stick patterns."
And this is the moment. This is where the entire paradigm shifts. Raphael steps out into the center of the hall with his 2 rattan sticks. Guru Manuel, his 70-year-old instructor, is just standing quietly at the edge of the mat with this knowing, calm smile.
He knows what's about to happen.
Oh, he definitely knows. And what happens next completely shatters that illusion of simplicity that Master Lu had built up.
Yeah.
Because Raphael doesn't perform a choreographed form.
No, he doesn't. And that is a crucial, foundational distinction here. He didn't show them a preset pattern of 108 rigid movements. He demonstrated reactive, principle-based movement.
Right.
To the completely untrained eye, or even to a highly trained eye that is actively looking for the wrong thing, looking for rigid stances. He just looked like he was swinging sticks in the air.
But the masters in the room, these people who have spent their lives studying body mechanics, they started to notice something.
The layers started to show.
Exactly. Every single movement Raphael made served multiple simultaneous purposes. And this is where my mind, as a karate practitioner, starts to genuinely melt a little bit.
Oh.
Because in traditional forms, Block A is designed exclusively for attack A. Strike B is designed for target B. It's very linear. But Raphael starts demonstrating this basic figure-8 stick pattern, the exact simple pattern Master Lu had just laughed at, and he shows how a single angle of attack, just one basic swing of the stick, actually contained 12 completely different applications depending entirely on how the opponent responded.
Let's really break the physics and geometry of that down because it's the absolute core of principle-based combat versus form-based combat.
Okay, let's do it.
In a form, you memorize a specific linear sequence of events. If the opponent steps forward and punches, I step back and block. But in the chaos of reality, an opponent rarely does exactly what your form expects.
Right, people are unpredictable.
Exactly. What Raphael was demonstrating is the extreme economy of motion. When he swings that rattan stick in a continuous figure-8 loop, he is generating centripetal force. That single motion isn't just a strike. Depending on the spatial relationship, the distance between him and the opponent, and how the opponent reacts, that exact same physical arc of his arm can be a defensive block.
Okay.
If the opponent reaches out, that same arc becomes a disarm, stripping their weapon. If they step in close, the stick wraps around their limb, becoming a joint lock. It is one movement, but infinite applications.
Wait, I need to jump in here and talk about the transition to empty hands, because this was the part that truly blew my mind in the video. Raphael showed how these seemingly basic stick patterns contain brutal locks, throws, and chokes disguised right inside the weapon movements.
It's seamless.
He explained that you are basically using a weapon to drill a biomechanical principle, but if you drop the stick, the movement of your empty hand is exactly the same, and now it's suddenly a chokehold or an armbar.
It all comes down to leverage and torque. The stick is essentially an amplifier of the principle. If you are holding a 26-inch piece of rattan, you have a long lever arm.
Right.
You learn exactly what angle is required to swing that lever through a certain plane of motion to generate maximum force. If you drop the stick, your own forearm becomes the lever. You don't have to learn a completely new technique.
That's wild.
If you understand the mechanics of wrapping a stick around an opponent's wrist to disarm them, you automatically understand the mechanics of wrapping your empty forearm around their elbow to execute a joint lock.
So you aren't learning one massive curriculum for weapons and a completely separate massive curriculum for empty hands.
Exactly. You are learning a single unifying principle of physics and applying it universally to whatever's in your hand.
That is just an insane level of efficiency. I mean, in my karate training, we have specific katas for weapons, like the bow staff or the sai, and we have completely different katas for empty hand striking. The idea that they are all seamlessly the exact same movement. That economy of motion is incredibly sophisticated.
Really?
It's compressing years of separate memorization into a single, highly adaptable flow.
It is this sophistication of compression. Master Lu's system expanded outward. It took a concept and expanded it into 108 distinct memorized movements.
Right.
Raphael's system compressed infinite physical possibilities into a handful of core principles.
Right.
The figure eight isn't a technique. It is a slowing system that integrates weapon and empty hand, high and low lines of attack, offense, and defense, all occurring in the exact same fraction of a second.
But and I would have argued this if I were in the room, swinging a stick in the air to demonstrate theory is one thing.
Sure.
Actually applying it against a resisting, highly trained attacker who has practiced a completely different system for decades.
Yeah.
That is something else entirely. You know, theory is great until you get punched in the face.
Which is precisely why Raphael didn't stop at theory. This is the moment he asks Guru Manuel to physically attack him.
Oh, here we go.
And crucially, he asks his instructor to attack him not with Filipino techniques, but with predetermined, highly rigid kung fu sequences.
Wow.
This is the ultimate undeniable test of adaptability.
Right, because FMA doesn't fight style against style. They don't look at a kung fu stance and mentally search their database for the, anti-kung fu block.
No, they don't have time for that.
When Guru Manuel attacks with these deep, lunging kung fu strikes, Raphael's response is to filter them through Filipino timing and angling. He isn't stubbornly opposing the art, he's absorbing it.
He's flowing with it.
Yeah. But the real shocker, the concept that I think permanently fractured Master Lu's 50-year-old worldview, was when Raphael practically demonstrated the concept of defanging the snake.
Defanging the snake.
Yeah.
If there's one phrase our listeners remember from this deep dive, it should be that. It is arguably the most defining philosophy of Filipino martial arts.
It's so cool.
And it represents a total ground-up inversion of traditional martial arts thinking.
Okay, I want to dive really deep into the mechanics of this, because Raphael speaks incredibly respectfully to Master Lu in this moment. He says, essentially, you perfect your techniques, you make your forms beautiful, you cultivate internal energy. That is sophisticated for a temple. But our ancestors didn't have temples. We learned something brutally direct, and the principle is this: do not fight the opponent's strength, destroy their ability to use it.
Let's analyze the biomechanics and the deeply ingrained logic of this. In many traditional arts, including your karate background, when an opponent throws a punch, the defender's primary goal is to block the incoming weapon, the fist, and then counterattack the opponent's body or head.
Yes, exactly. Block and then strike the center.
You're trying to stop the weapon, and then you are trying to attack the core of the opponent. In this metaphor, the opponent is the snake. You are actively trying to fight the whole snake.
Exactly. If someone steps in with a reverse punch aimed at my chest, my trained response is to step back into a deep stance, execute a downward block with my forearm to crash their arm out of the way, and then I step back in to deliver a strike to their ribs or face.
It's a multi-step process.
It really is. A highly choreographed process entirely focused on getting to the opponent's center mass.
But defanging the snake bypasses the center mass entirely. Entirely. Raphael demonstrates this vividly with Guru Manuel. Manuel steps forward and throws a powerful linear kung fu punch. Raphael does not block it.
Wait, he doesn't block it at all.
He doesn't try to stop the massive kinetic energy of the punch with a rigid forearm block. Instead, he uses his rattan stick to aggressively strike the attacking arm itself.
Oh, wow.
And he doesn't just flail and hit it randomly. He targets specific, highly vulnerable anatomical points.
Wait, hold on. This is where the skeptical karate guy in me has to push back hard. A kung fu master or any trained fighter punches incredibly fast. If I'm standing there and I try to hit a fast-moving, retracting arm with a stick and I miss by a fraction of an inch, I am taking a full-force fist straight to the jaw.
That is a very valid concern.
Doesn't this entire FMA concept rely on an insanely high margin of error compared to just putting up a solid, wide block?
That is an excellent point, and it's exactly why defanging the snake doesn't work in a vacuum. It requires a specific biomechanical engine to function, and that engine is FMA footwork.
Okay, the footwork.
You are assuming the defender stays on the center line, the direct path of the punch. But FMA uses what is called zoning, or triangle footwork. As Manuel punches, Raphael doesn't just stand there. He steps off the center line at a 45-degree angle.
Oh, I see.
He removes his head and body from the path of danger completely. So even if he swings the stick at the arm and completely misses, the punch sails past him anyway.
So the footwork guarantees safety, and the strike to the limb is the neutralization.
Exactly. And let's look at the biology of that strike.
Yeah.
A piece of fire-hardened rattan is essentially a force multiplier.
Right.
When you swing it, the physics of centripetal force means the tip of that stick is moving incredibly fast, sometimes over 80 miles per hour.
Wow.
When Raphael strikes Manuel's incoming arm, he is targeting the radial nerve, or the ulnar nerve.
What actually happens to the body in that fraction of a second, like physically?
When a dense object moving at high velocity impacts those specific nerve clusters, it causes a phenomenon called neuropraxia.
Neuropraxia.
Yes. It is a temporary disruption of the nerve conduction. The electrical signal from the brain to the hand is literally severed for a few moments.
Wait, really? The signal just cuts out.
It just cuts out. The muscles in the hand and forearm involuntarily relax. The opponent drops their weapon or their hand goes completely painfully numb. You have made that limb instantaneously and temporarily unusable.
He takes away the fangs.
Precisely. If a venomous snake strikes at you in the wild, you don't try to rigidly block its head with your arm and then punch it in the tail. You destroy the fangs.
Right.
If you take away the opponent's primary weapon, their attacking arm, their lead leg, their structural base, the fight is effectively over. You simply don't need to fight the whole opponent.
This is such a profound shift in combat logic. It completely bypasses the need for complex form memorization because you aren't trying to decipher the opponent's overall style or figure out if they're using a crane stance or a tiger stance.
Exactly, it doesn't matter.
You are simply reacting to the immediate physical threat entering your space, and you're destroying its structural integrity.
Let's test this out.
Oh, yeah. I want to pause here and try a little interactive thought experiment with you, the listener. If you're listening to this right now, I want you to imagine a scenario. Let's say you're standing on the street and someone aggressively steps toward you and throws a wild, sweeping, overhand punch aimed right at your head.
Very common attack.
Super common. Think about your absolute first instinct. Driven by human nature and, let's be real, every action movie you've ever seen, your instinct is probably to flinch, brace yourself, and throw your arms up around your face to absorb the blow, right? You want to put a wall between you and the danger. Or maybe you want to backpedal as fast as you can.
Both of those are totally natural reactions, and both of those represent the fighting the whole snake mentality.
Right.
If you brace and block, you absorb the damage, and the opponent can just punch again. If you backpedal, you give them the space to reset and chase you.
Exactly. So here is the quiz. Based on what we just learned about traditional martial arts versus FMA, what is the most efficient principle-based response? Is it A, memorize a rigid stance to block and absorb the blow? B, retreat and prepare a counter combination of 5 distinct strikes? Or C, step into the attack, ignoring their body, and strike directly at the attacking limb to neutralize the threat entirely?
I think we know the answer here.
It's C, of course.
Yes. It is entirely uncompromising, and as you noted earlier, it completely nullifies the opponent's years of training. It fundamentally doesn't matter if that kung fu master has memorized a 108 movement dragon form or if they've spent a decade doing breathing exercises.
Because none of that matters if your arm doesn't work.
Right. If their lead arm suddenly goes dead and numb from a precise strike to the radial nerve, their entire martial system collapses in that single moment.
But this brings up a massive neurological question for me. Swinging a stick, or even your hand, at a fast-moving arm requires insane precision and timing. How do they know exactly when and where to strike without visualizing the forms in their head? If they aren't memorizing sequences, how do they react so unbelievably fast?
That brings us to what might be the most conceptually difficult part of FMA for a traditionalist to grasp. And it's the exact thing Master Lu criticized them for lacking: sensitivity training.
Yes. Master Lu had explicitly criticized FMA for lacking internal cultivation and spiritual depth, and Raphael's response to this in the demonstration hall is just brilliant.
It really is.
He tells Master Lu, "We don't have internal energy cultivation in the way you do, sitting in quiet meditation, but we have sensitivity training. We develop the ability to physically feel the opponent's intention through contact, to read their nervous system without thinking."
Let's break down exactly what happened next, because it's a granular demonstration of tactile neurology versus visual processing. Raphael issues a challenge. He asks Master Lu to step forward and firmly grab his wrist. Master Lu does so.
Right.
Master Lu then tries to move in various ways, perhaps shifting his weight to attempt a traditional throw, or tensing his shoulder muscle to initiate a strike with his other hand. But the source video clearly shows that before Master Lu can even complete the thought of the technique, let alone the physical execution of it, Raphael is already moving. He's already flowing, already neutralizing him.
And he isn't doing this through superior athletic speed or raw muscle strength, right? The guy is 28. Master Lu is older, but vastly more experienced.
Vast,
And Raphael is doing it purely through feeling the motion the absolute microsecond it begins. Now, comparing this to karate sparring. In karate, we are taught to look for visual tells.
Right, watching the body.
Yeah. I'm standing a few feet away from you on the mat, and my eyes are locked on your shoulders and your hips. If your right shoulder drops a fraction of an inch, my optic nerve captures that light, sends the data to my visual cortex, my brain processes it, decides you're throwing a right cross, searches my memorized catalog of forms for the appropriate block, and finally sends the electrical signal down my spinal cord to my arm to move.
Which, neurologically speaking, takes a massive amount of time.
It does.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are talking about human reaction times. The average visual reaction time for a human being is roughly 200 to 250 milliseconds. And that is just to react to a simple stimulus like a light turning green.
Oh, wow.
When you add in the complexity of fighting, which is governed by Hicks' law, it gets much, much slower.
Okay, what is Hicks' law in this context?
Hicks' law is a psychological principle that states the more choices you have, the longer it takes you to make a decision.
I see.
If you have memorized 108 movements and you see an attack coming, your brain has to sort through an immense database of potential responses. This significantly increases your reaction time. In combat, where a punch takes maybe 150 milliseconds to reach your face, relying on visual processing and complex decision-making means you are mathematically guaranteed to be too slow.
Math doesn't lie.
By the time your brain registers the dropping shoulder, processes the options, and sends the signal to block, the punch is already connected.
That explains so much about why sparring often looks nothing like the beautiful forms. So how does tactile sensitivity bypass this biological speed limit?
Because Raphael is reading intention through touch, through the somatosensory system. When Master Lu grabs his wrist, they're physically connected.
Right.
Raphael is feeling the microscopic shift in pressure, the slight increase in tension in Master Lu's fingers, the tiny shift in weight distribution through the floor. Tactile processing is significantly faster than visual processing.
Wait, really? Touch is faster than sight?
Yes. Tactile reflexes can essentially bypass the higher cognitive centers of the brain. The spinal cord and the lower brain can react to a sudden shift in balance or pressure before the conscious visual brain even formulates a thought. It's pure, unadulterated reflex based on tactile feedback.
It's like he has completely bypassed the visual cortex entirely. That is the ultimate adaptability.
When you rely on visual cues and memorized forms, you are always, by definition, living in the past. You are reacting to an action that the opponent has already initiated.
Because it already happened by the time you see it.
Exactly. Sensitivity training allows a fighter to live perfectly in the present moment, almost predicting the future, because they physically feel the opponent's intention before it blossoms into a full physical action. This eliminates the need to be athletically faster or structurally stronger than your opponent. You simply have to be more attuned to their neurological shifts.
You can just imagine the dead silence in that demonstration hall in Beijing. You have these revered grandmasters watching this young Filipino guy completely neutralize the most respected kung fu master in China.
It must have been stunning.
And he's not doing it by overpowering him. He's doing it by literally feeling his intentions and flowing around them like water. It is a profoundly intimate thing in a martial sense.
And this physical connection, this tactile, silent dialogue they are having on the mat, leads directly into the deeper philosophical difference between these two visions of mastery.
Right.
Remember, Master Lu had accused FMA of lacking a spiritual dimension because they didn't have ancient text or meditative practices.
Oh, this is the part that is just incredible. Raphael looks at him and says, "You said we lack philosophy and spiritual dimension, but we have lakas lube."
Lakas lube.
And let me make sure I am pronouncing and defining this correctly because it is crucial. Lakas means strength, and lube means inside or the inner self. Inner strength, spiritual courage.
Yes, lakas lube is a deeply embedded Filipino cultural concept. It is not just bravery. It is an intrinsic, unshakable inner fortitude. Raphael defines it for the room so specifically.
What does he say?
He says this is the internal strength that comes not from sitting and meditating in quiet, safe temples, but from facing visceral, real-world danger and finding an absolute calm within that chaos.
Our philosophy wasn't written in temples. It was lived in jungles, on beaches, in moments of life and death. That is a staggering philosophical statement to drop in a room full of temple lineage masters.
It really is.
Master Lu's definition of mastery is tied exclusively to scholarly pursuit. Studying ancient texts, cultivating internal energy in a controlled environment, agonizing over a single form for 10 years. It is a very top-down, pristine philosophical approach.
But Raphael is presenting a bottom-up philosophy. The spiritual dimension of Filipino martial arts is forged in the crucible of absolute terrifying chaos. True spiritual mastery in the FMA paradigm isn't about perfectly executing a beautiful aesthetic movement while everyone claps.
Right.
It is about maintaining a calm, clear, analytical mind when someone is actively trying to take your life with a blade. It is the spiritual courage, the lakas lube, to stand in the fire, not panic, and maintain your physical flow.
The concept of flow. Raphael demonstrates this continuously during the exchange. He goes from using the rattan weapon to using empty hands, from long-range striking to close-range joint grappling, from standing up to manipulating balance, all seamlessly.
Without a single pause.
He does all of this without pausing, without thinking. The sophistication is in the seamless adaptability, not in the complexity of any single individual technique.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing a clash between two fundamentally different ways of navigating human existence.
Okay, I like that.
One paradigm relies on creating a perfect, highly ordered, rigid system to impose upon reality, the 108 movements the dragon form. It assumes reality can be controlled if the system is complex enough.
Right, the illusion of control.
Exactly.
Right.
The other paradigm accepts that reality is inherently chaotic, violent, and unpredictable, and focuses entirely on cultivating the internal adaptability to flow with whatever unpredictable input happens.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of this incredible exchange, the ultimate test of mutual respect between these two men. Raphael issues a final, open invitation.
The final challenge.
He asks Master Lu to demonstrate any kung fu technique on him, any attack, any complex combination he wants. He's basically saying, throw your absolute best, most complicated temple forge system at my jungle forge principles, and let's see what happens.
Master Lu is completely engaged at this point. He isn't dismissive anymore. He's intensely curious.
He's hooked.
He steps in and throws a highly complex, aggressive kung fu combination, multiple rapid linear strikes followed by a deep, sweeping leg attack designed to take Raphael to the ground.
And Raphael's defense is just a masterclass in this philosophy of yielding flow. He doesn't pull out a rigid, superior Filipino blocking technique to smash Master Lu's attack. He defends it by showing how FMA evolved to work within the framework of any system. He uses his Filipino timing and his triangular footwork, but he actually integrates the circular motion of Master Lu's own kung fu attack. He redirects Master Lu's own kinetic energy. He wasn't fighting against the kung fu, he was flowing with it and neutralizing it.
It is the ultimate physical manifestation of yielding to overcome. He didn't try to stop a speeding train. He just stepped slightly off the tracks and let the train exhaust its own fuel.
That's a great analogy.
He didn't fight the 108 movement dragon. He just guided it into an empty space. And this is the moment where 50 years of deeply ingrained dogma fractures.
Master Lu steps back, and for the first time in decades, his face shows genuine, unguarded surprise and profound respect. He says quietly in Mandarin and then repeating it in English for the room, "This is not what I expected. This is sophisticated in a way I did not understand." He acknowledges that it's not sophisticated in the ornate kung fu way, but he says something incredible. Perhaps more sophisticated because it requires no forms to memorize, no patterns to perfect, only principles to understand and apply infinitely.
That realization requires an immense, almost unfathomable amount of humility. To stand in front of your peers, the elite martial artists of an entire continent, and publicly admit that the primary metric you have used to measure mastery for 50 years was incomplete.
He didn't just admit it verbally either. He executed a deep, formal, traditional bow to a 28-year-old man. He bowed to Raphael, publicly acknowledging him as a master of equal standing.
Beautiful.
He stated to the room, "I judged without understanding. I saw simplicity and assumed lack of depth. But I see now that your martial arts chose efficiency over elaboration, principle over pattern, adaptation over tradition."
Efficiency over elaboration. That phrase perfectly, elegantly encapsulates the entire paradigm shift of that afternoon.
And this realization, this profound shift, didn't just stay quietly contained in that hall. The video of this exact exchange gets posted online. It goes absolutely viral, hitting over 80 million views across social media.
It was everywhere.
But it wasn't just entertaining internet content for people to argue over in the comments. It literally sparked a revolution in martial arts education across the globe. So, what does this all mean for the modern martial arts landscape?
Well, it forced a massive, uncomfortable reevaluation within deeply traditional Asian martial arts communities. The video practically proved that what they had historically dismissed as basic stick fighting was actually a missing piece of the combative puzzle.
The direct real-world impact is wild to look at. Major kung fu schools and China institutions that pride themselves on thousands of years of exclusive, unbroken tradition started actively inviting Filipino martial arts instructors to teach seminars.
They wanted that knowledge.
They specifically wanted to learn this tactile sensitivity training and these adaptive principles. Japanese karate masters, people from my own stylistic background, started incorporating Filipino weapons training. They finally saw how armed and unarmed combat could be completely seamlessly integrated through core physics rather than segmented into different katas. Even Korean taekwondo schools began adopting FMA triangular footwork and angling to supplement their highly linear kicking styles.
And we must be very clear about the nature of this integration. Raphael didn't prove that Filipino martial arts were somehow objectively superior to kung fu or karate or taekwondo. He didn't invalidate their arts or tell them to stop kicking.
Right, he didn't beat kung fu in a stylistic war.
Exactly. What he proved was that FMA offered a totally different axis of sophistication. It offered the raw principles of maximum efficiency and tactile adaptation. And what global masters quickly realized is that these Filipino principles act as a universal force multiplier.
A force multiplier.
Think about it less like giving them a whole new set of techniques to memorize, and more like changing the underlying grammar of how they fight. A highly trained taekwondo fighter already knows all the words, the jumping kicks, the spinning strikes.
Right, the vocabulary.
But FMA teaches them how to arrange those words into fluid, adaptable sentences they couldn't speak before. They don't stop being a taekwondo master. They become an infinitely more adaptable taekwondo master. FMA enhances any existing martial art it touches because it operates on foundational physics and neurology, not on rigid stylistic rules.
That grammar analogy is perfect. It changes how you structure the physical conversation of a fight. Years after this event, Master Lu was featured in a documentary, and his reflection on that day in Beijing is just so poignant.
What did he say?
He said, "I spent 50 years perfecting forms and cultivating internal energy. Raphael showed me in 20 minutes that sophistication can take many forms. I had confused complexity with depth and elaboration with mastery."
Confuse complexity with depth. How incredibly often do we see that exact fallacy in our own lives outside the dojo? We assume that because a system, a corporate process, or a piece of software is incredibly complicated and difficult to learn, it must therefore be profound and necessary.
Oh, all the time.
Master Lu learned the hard way that dismissing something because it looks outwardly simple is to entirely miss the immense, hard-won sophistication hidden within that simplicity.
And Guru Manuel, Raphael's 70-year-old instructor who stood quietly watching the whole time, had a perspective that grounds this entire phenomenon in raw reality. He said, "We never needed validation from ancient traditions to know our arts were profound. But sometimes those steeped in tradition need to be reminded that sophistication isn't measured by how complicated something looks, but by how well it works when everything is on the line.
When everything is on the line, when raw survival is the ultimate arbiter of truth, you absolutely do not choose elegance over effectiveness. You strip away every single piece of elaboration.
Yeah.
And the profound, beautiful paradox of this whole story is that by exclusively choosing brutal effectiveness and uncompromising economy of motion, the Filipino ancestors inadvertently created a system of movement that possesses its own profound, devastating elegance.
It's just an incredible journey to track. We started this deep dive in a formal, highly structured demonstration hall in Beijing, listening to a dismissive laugh from a master with 50 years of pristine tradition behind him.
And we end with a global redefinition of what martial sophistication actually looks like in practice.
Exactly. We watched a young practitioner prove that the messy, chaotic, blood-soaked survival tactics of the jungle could hold a mirror up to the ancient temples and reflect a truth they had slowly forgotten over centuries.
That simplicity often hides the absolute deepest mastery.
It raises a profound question about how we structure our knowledge, our habits, and our practices today.
It really does. If someone is intensely dedicated, as disciplined, and as highly trained as Master Lu Chen could spend half a century confusing elaboration with true mastery, it begs us to look inward. In what areas of our own modern, data-obsessed, highly structured lives are we painstakingly building 108 movement metaphorical forms? Where are we stubbornly creating unnecessary complexity when a single, adaptable principle would solve the problem much more efficiently?
That is exactly what I want you, the listener, to think about as you go through your week. I want to issue a direct challenge to you right now.
Let's hear it.
Look at a complex, overwhelming problem you are currently facing. Maybe it's a massive project at work that has too many moving parts, a recurring conflict in a relationship, or a personal goal that feels like a massive, tangled mess of prerequisites.
We all have those.
We do. Stop trying to fight the whole snake. Look at that problem and ask yourself, how can I defang this? What is the single core obstacle, the primary weapon of this problem, that I can neutralize directly to make the rest of the complexity just collapse? Find your economy of motion. Stop memorizing the forms of how things should be done and start applying raw principles.
I love that.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey from the quiet temples to the chaotic jungles and back again. Keep defanging those snakes in your own life, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive. Remember, when the landscape gets murky and your usual systems fail, sometimes you don't need a more complicated map, you just need to feel the flow.
Well said. Until next time.